I hope you are all tuned in and ready for an insightful journey into the world of React. First off, let's meet our host for today. I'm Rahul, technical lead at Rently.
Rahul, I can't hear you if you're speaking.
No, we are just waiting for a few technical things.
Okay, it's not the actual broadcast.
Uh, Team will start at 10:32. 10:32 start, please.
We are just waiting for everyone to join. So please give us some moment.
Rahul, please start.
Yeah, thanks. So, greetings everyone. I hope you are all tuned in and ready for an insightful journey into the world of React. First off, let's meet our host for today. I'm Rahul, technical lead at Rently with a decade of experience. We also have Shivranjani, an associate tech lead who's got 5 years of solid experience, mainly focused on React.js. And last but not the least, meet Shrimina, a full stack developer who's an expert in Ruby on Rails and React. Now, before we dive into the nitty gritty, let me take you on a quick journey through the evolution of our company. We started our journey back in 2011, and now we are a global player with a presence in India, China, and the US. Our team of over 550 talented individuals is spread across 6 vibrant cities in India, working together to redefine modern living. But what really makes us stand out? Bentley is a hub of innovation, especially among our younger team members who constantly generate fresh ideas. As industry thought leaders, we feel a responsibility to share our experiences and insights with you. That's where Renty Tech Talks comes in. It's not just a discussion series, it's our way of fostering a community of tech enthusiasts who believe in technology's potential to solve real world problems. So, whether you are a seasoned tech pro or just starting out, we welcome you to join us in exploring the exciting world of technology. Before we kick off, a quick bit of housekeeping. You can engage with us by posting your questions throughout this presentation. You can access the question asking option by clicking on the setting icon located at the top right corner. Now, please try to ask us questions in the question section rather than in chat section. That will be help us to gather the questions in the sessions. We have structured the session with two dedicated question answer blocks, one in the middle and another towards the end. So keep those questions flowing. Now, as you may recall, we have previously covered two webinars on OAuth authorization and concurrency in Ruby, both of which are now accessible on Rently's YouTube channel. Before we dive into the details, I would like to ask a question to Shiva. Shiva, could you enlighten us on why custom hooks are the focus of today's discussion?
Sure, definitely, Rahul. So it has become a very preferred approach for most of the React developers to use hooks in the day-to-day life. Though our React developers know the basic concepts of hook, here we are today to explore the sites where we found it very interesting during our application development. We thought of sharing this knowledge to our community through the Tech Talks would do a great difference. So that's the main reason we have taken this topic today.
Exciting. Can't wait to see that. Okay, so let's take a moment to overview what we'll be covering in today's session. We will start with a brief overview of the basics of hooks. Next, we will roll up our sleeves and construct an application utilizing custom hook for state management and data persistence. But that's not all. We'll also explore various other use cases to give you a comprehensive understanding. Welcome to Rentley Tech Talks. Let's dive right in. Shimina, are you ready to kick things off?
Yes, Rahul, we are ready to start. Let us start with a question. Rahul, what can you see from this image?
I think it's a
I think
smiley.
it's a smiley.
Well, you're right. This is a smiley. And let me ask you a second question. So, what do you see from this?
Another emoji,
Another
probably in a different style.
Of course, you're right this time as well. It is a representation of another emoji which is looking excited and surprised look. Now, let me ask you a last question of the slide. What do you see from this?
I think it's another emoji as we are discussing emoji previously as well, but I'm not sure whose face this is.
This is not the face, Rahul. This represents the syntax of hooks. Starting with the use keyword, we write down our logic, followed by the dependency array, ending with the parenthesis and the semicolon. Looks like a smiley, but it's not actually it is. Maybe we can call this as a React developer smiley because hook makes us the developer to build application in a very easy and quick way. So before we start, I'll give a disclaimer about it. This webinar is not going to be a regular React tutorial. Instead, it is going to be a very fast grasping knowledge. Of course, we're going to code more and hoping we all together will have a fun learning. And at the end, Shivaranjani and myself going to use the word use for multiple times throughout the webinar. So yeah, let's get started. Let me refresh the basics of hook. In general English term, hook is said to be a group of sentences or words which is to be written in the beginning of the paragraph to spark the curiosity of the users. Similarly, is asked to be written in beginning of the component and it can be used anywhere else. By this way, we don't want to be rewriting the logic again and again in different components. So this improves code reusability and flexibilities. In fact, we can say that hook help us to hook into the React features like states and components. As we know, there are two types of hook. One is built-in, the other one is custom. Built-in hook, like based on our expectations of improvising the performances, we can go for use memo, use callback hook. If you wanted more of transitions and UI interfaces, you can choose use transition hook. So like this, based on our needs, people can choose and use the hook from the React library wisely. Nevertheless, not all requirements will be satisfied with these 17 hooks, right? There needs to be some customization and some level of improvement which is required based on the application needs. So React also you ask the user to develop their own hook based on their application. This gave to the rise of custom hook. Now, components are the building block of a React application. It is the combination of a state and user interface. We all know that whenever the state renders, it have a direct impact on what the user will see on the web screen. And coming to hook, If you write a business logic and all the logic which is corresponding to the state management inside a hook separately, and now the component will contain only of UI elements. So as a React developer, I don't want to be considered more about the logic which the hooks can handle by itself. And as a front-end developer, we can concentrate more on our styling and CSS part. Hook provides that particular flexibility. This structure will be better explained with an example. Rahul, have you ever used the to-do list application?
Oh, absolutely. I rely on a to-do list app every week, every day for everything from groceries to paying bills. So it's part of my life, you can say.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Let us make use of your daily usage app in that case. Let's take To-Do app as an application which has an input box. If you enter and click the add button, the item is getting added into the list. And each item is provided by its own edit and delete options. Yeah, let us write a custom hook for this particular application. As a syntax, the hook starts with use. The name of the hook is use to do, starting with use. And this uses the use state hook to create the to do's and the set to do functions. And based on the requirement, which is addition and removal, we are writing two distinct functions called add to do and the remove to do. Inside add to do, we are setting the to do state with the newly occurred to do item, and in the remove to do, we'll splice the to do item with the index which is being passed from the user. And at the end, we are returning three things, which is to do state and add to do remove to do function, which is being declared in this particular custom hook. Let's keep this custom hook separate in the another file. Now, let us see how to use this function in our own application. In our to-do application, it's starting with a simple import statement, importing the custom hook and the destructure, the custom hook which is being returned. That is the three items, which is to-dos and another two other function. To-do is the state which can be accessed directly, but the other two are function, right? So it is being called with the parenthesis. As you can see, on click of add to do button, handle add to do is triggered, and by which we mount our add to do function, which is being returned in the custom hook. Similarly, for remove to do, on click of remove to do button, we call remove to do action, which is being returned in the custom hook. So this makes the code very clean. We are making use of two functions which is not declared straightly in our component. We are just importing the custom hook and utilizing in our child component. It is as simple as it is like plugging the necessary custom hook and playing with it, right? Now, let us increase the level of complexity by taking a step forward. Consider we have a tab application with 5 tabs. Each tab represents a person, and each person is provided with a to-do application. So the code logic is written like this. It is 5 tab, and based on the active tab, the switch case renders the same component based on the active tab. It is the same component as you can see. And Rahul, what do you think? If a person want type something in the to-do item, will that be shared across other persons?
I think it should not be because to do is something very personal, I guess. So I think it should not be.
Okay. With this code snippet, let us verify your answer quickly with a live demo. As you can see, I'm in person 1 to-do list, adding Rentley to the to-do list. I'm navigating to person 3. Well, Rahul, my item of person 1 is being shared with person 3 as well. So if I add webinar to my to-do item and go to person 2, yes, all the to-do items is being shared with all the persons. Addition looks in this way. Maybe let's try the removal. I'm removing webinar and Rentley from person 5 to do item. and it's been disappeared for all persons to-do list. Well, this is not the case, right? Because the to-do items should not be shared across the person. There, in this scenario, we can be handling with two cases. One, by uniquely passing the key for each of the component, and the other, we have to pass the prop to all the component, like passing the active tab to all the component which is being mounted over here. But this is a simple application. I have only one tab with 5%. What if in future the same application is mounted by multiple users? Consider I have n number of tab application and each tab has 5 to-do list. So when the number of count is increased, the number of tab application increased, the complexity of handling and passing the prop to each component gets increased. Usage of custom hook is pretty simple, but what is not simple is handling the state. Day by day, in a React world, folks come up with different approaches for state management. In this webinar, we'll put forth few of the ways by which you can handle your own state by your own requirements. In that case, let us start with the first approach, which is the context approach. So by this, we don't want to pass the prop directly to each of the child component. Instead, context by itself will pass the prop to the dormitory. This all starts with creating a global store with the help of create context hook. And then we need to create a provider which accepts the children and the initial state, forming the store with the help of initial state which is being passed. And secondly, we have to form the context value with the help of the store which is being formed. And in the end, we have to return our child component wrapped with the provider. Finally, here is our hero, use store, which will return the use context, which will return the context with the help of use context hook, as you can see here. Now, let us see how to use this. So since our child component is our to-do application, that has to be wrapped with the provider which is being created. And this provider accepts the state. So I need to create an initial state for this. In the beginning, the item will be empty, right? So we are creating an initial state with the empty array inside the to-do app. I'm passing that to our store provider. Let us see how to use this in our child component. To-do app is our child component. This all starts with importing our custom hook from and destructuring the values which is being returned. As we know, use to return a context value. Hence, the first parameter is going to be our to-do state, and the second is going to be our action. So yeah, set store is an action by which we can modify the store which is being created in the use hook from a child component itself. Inside the set store, we are destructuring our old to-dos and then appending our new to-do to our to-do store, which is being mounted in our custom hook. Well, usage of use state will not always be recommended because they are highly prone to break, as well as manipulating the store directly inside the child component is not always recommendable. Because since the complexity increases, use store manipulates within the state, hence the result and the output will not come in the expected way. Since we know set states are not asynchronous, right? Hence, we need to go for use reducer. Use reducer is pretty simple and let's see how to do it. So use reducer needs a reducer function for which we are creating a reducer function with the help of action type which is being passed. Like it depends on the application. If you need for addition and removal, you can write two cases and define your action over here and then pass this particular action to the store provider. Inside our store provider, modify your code to accept the reducer function which is being passed. Now, set your store with the help of use reducer and not via use state. As you can see here, We are mounting used reducer hook and passing the reducer action, and our store is set it with the help of used reducer. Rest remains the same. We are forming the hook and returning our child component wrapped with the provider. This also requires the modification in our child component. Inside our to-do structuring part, earlier we were receiving an set store function. Now it is going to be a dispatch action. As you can see, on click of add to do, handle add to do is mounted, and from here we are calling a dispatch action to dispatch our action called add to do, whose definition is written over in app.js, and then we are passing our new to do. To so by this we are not directly changing the store. Instead, we are dispatching an action which is written over in the app.js, and this particular action will take care of changing the store with the parameters being passed in the child component. With this, the logic is pretty simple for understanding as well as for manipulating. Okay, now this is simple. What if my tab application requires multiple context providers and multiple consumers if you are going for another approach? So in that case, usage of multiple context will make your DOM trees look something like this. Multiple provider, if you go for consumer, there will be multiple context consumers added to it as well. This is difficult to understand not only for humans but also for DOM tree. Because it's obvious, right? Multiple wrapping definitely will increase your code complexity. This particular scenario is called context hell. So, what can be a solution for this? Now, we'll put forth our second approach called regex reducer method. Regex is a open source library which is available in React. With this, we start with creating a reducer. As you can see, our first snippet in our left side, and the second snippet shows how to configure our store. And the snippet in the right side, we are as we do, and then rendering the reducer state with the help of use selector. So as we can see, there are only 4 steps. Create a store, consume that in your reducer, these with the help of use selector, get your reducer store and dispatch the action which is being written in the right snippet. With this only 4-step approach, the process is very easy to understand, and this is also easy for the DOM tree to manipulate it. This also have some caveats, like regex is simple, but still deep inside internally, this make use of context APIs to perform with. Each approach has its own pros and cons. We have to choose and use efficiently. Yeah. With this, we come to the mid of the session. Rahul, is there any questions?
Yes, Shrimina, we have received quite a few questions for this first half. And the first question is from Shatish, and he asked, will the state inside the custom hook get shared if it's being called multiple times, as shown in the example?
Well, this is a very good question, Satish. The state inside the custom hook will not get shared. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we have to link. Okay, let me come in this way. But that is wrong. Hook is directly attached to the instance which is present in the DOM tree and not actually to the component. Since it is modified to the instances, the DOM tree is not able to recognize the differences between the components. So the easiest way is we have to make the DOM tree to understand that these are different instances by actually passing a unique key down the DOM tree. Hope this answers your question.
Yeah, very informative. Next question is from Ghana, and she asked, which is preferable, context APIs or Redux reducers?
Yeah, I can take that question, Rahul. That's really a debatable question, Ghana. So the preference between using context APIs and Redux reducers depends on various factors actually. Both context and Redux serve as a state management solutions in React applications, but they do definitely have different use cases though. Context API is so simple to manage. It can be used for sharing small bits of information to components. But Redux plays a very important role in the global state management, and it provides a very clear and predictable way to handle state changes through actions and reduces. And as we know, it also supports middleware. I'd recommend to go with context API when the state is minimal, and we can choose to go with Redux when we deal with larger projects and large amount of state management is required. So choose and use wisely. Yeah.
Informative. Next question, and the last question for this first half is from Naresh. And Naresh asks, when should we opt for use state and when to choose use reducer in React components?
Well, Naresh, we all know the basics of use state. It is a simple state for managing the state management. Though it is simple, we have to be very cautious. Like on considering the previous state, the value should be manipulated, and then use state is not asynchronous because right after setting the state, we cannot expect in this very next line to make the state right. So like this, there are few cons over use state. Now, in coming to use reducer, it is highly recommendable when your state management is complex and the states inside your components are being shared with the context or with other components. So when your components are intent dependent, you will definitely need to use reducer. Also, the number of rendering is much lesser in use reducer compared with the use states. So yeah, when your component is simple, you can choose use state to increase your complexity or to faster your performances. Definitely you should choose use reducer.
Thanks, Naresh, for asking this question. I hope you and others can decide between use state and use reducer, which one to choose on what purpose and on what use case. So next, we will check with Shiva. So Shiva, what we have from your end?
Yes, Rahul. So, what do you think until now, whatever we have seen? Have we developed our to-do application?
I'm not fully convinced because I answered wrongly when Shimina asked me whether that my to-do item will be shared among the persons or not. Maybe a few things can be modified. I hope you can
Exactly,
help us
Rahul.
on that. Yep.
Sure. Yeah. So we have built a fully working application, but it is not yet ready to be rolled out because the data entered by the user will be deleted whenever we are refreshing the application. So that's what we'll be concentrating right now. How do we have our data persisted? So the main simple way how to have our data persisted is via the local storage. So local storage in web application is used to store data with zero expiration time. And the data in local storage remains persisted even if the browser is closed. And if we try to reopen our application, we can able to access our data from the local storage whenever we want. Now, let's include local storage as part of our application. So if you're using Redux, then including local storage can be done as quickly as possible. As you can see in the code, we have instantiated the local storage item and we are updating that item with the to-do list. And for displaying, we'll be using the same local storage data. So we'll be retrieving the data from the local storage and then display them to the users. Here, the local storage serves its purpose on saving the data, what we require. But it's important to note that we should be mindful of security implications. We might have to think what will happen if we use local storage as it is prone to security risks such as potential for data manipulation by the users or the risk of storing sensitive information. So we might have to double verify the data we store as part of the local storage. Now let's continue our discussion to the to-do application now. And Rahul, I have noticed that you are a big fan of to-do app. So how do you prefer to use it? Let's say you have added a task as part of your desktop browser. Would you like to like that particular task to be synced up with your mobile as well?
Absolutely. I would love to have the same to-do list on my mobile and tablet as well. Like I rely on my to-do list app a lot. It helps me to boost my productivity as a whole. So I definitely like to have my to-do app on all my devices.
That's true, but unfortunately, with our current setup, that is not possible. Our users, like Rahul, expect very seamless access across all the devices. So, how do we make this happen? We have to go ahead with remote data persistence here. So, remote data persistence is very fundamental in modern web applications. Where users expect to access their data seamlessly from various devices and also from various locations. Then we'll have to go with server storage. Whenever there is an update in the to-do list, we might have to update the list in the server as well, so that our users can access our applications from various locations and devices. So now we'll be moving from local storage to server storage. Transitioning from local to server storage presents a primary challenge in adapting our APIs from synchronous to asynchronous functionality. Also, we are no longer dealing with the store, we'll be interacting with the server. Interacting with the server will happen based on the mutations as well. Now, if you're moving from local storage to server storage, the things which we have been using, like use dispatch and use store, kinds of becomes a big question mark. We have to replace them with necessary functions in order to make sure that our mutations are properly updated in the server as expected. So to answer to this question, let's see what our components are capable of. Our components are a very really great place to compose user interfaces and business logics together. We can take things like local states, markups, styles, UI events, the things which I feel should be part of the components. We kind of mix them together with external APIs, expensive computations, or usage of external library. So now let's see a new pattern today for which we need to remember that our custom hooks are free. I'll say that custom hooks are the very powerful hook we have as part of React. Custom hook can be a layer for the components where it interacts with the server or the store as a proxy. Now let's take our to-do application as an example. Um, yeah, where we have to-dos component, and we can have our use to-dos custom hook, which will do the heavy lifting on the data for the to-dos component here. I know this is interesting. Now let's look into how we can implement this. We can just import our custom hook and expect it to return the list of to-dos to the component, which is good for now. That is what we wanted. Now let's look into our custom hook. This use to-dos hook can do anything we want it to do as long as it returns the list of to-dos, which is what we care about. All the implementation details are hidden from the component here. As the list of data will be returned from the server, then our APIs will be asynchronous in nature. Then we might have to keep track of some of the known steps here. As the API calls are asynchronous, we know that there will be loading state, and we know that there might be some errors. So we are tracking those kinds of informations for the components in order to them to react accordingly. So now we have confirmed the signature of the return from custom hooks. Now we can do more things inside our use to do's hook here. We could use Axios with REST GET API to communicate with server inside our use to do's hook. So those who don't know, Axios is a package where we use it to communicate with the server and retrieve back the information for us to access inside our code. And here we have made use of use hook. This is one of the interesting hook to use where the future of React application, we can see more of them in usage. This reads the value of the promises or context APIs for us. Something to be noted here as well, the use hook is under canary release. And now we can understand that our Axios help is to communicate with the server and retrieve the information back to us. And these data are sent back to the component to be rendered as required. Now, as long as we are returning the to-do data, loading state and error state, The components which are consuming this use to do's custom hook don't actually care what is happening inside our use to do's hook. So now I assume that we understand our pattern on how we can form a business layer with the help of custom hook. To state in simple words, we have to extract the logic from the component. Next, we have to define the hook signature, and then we'll have to implement the logic inside our custom hooks. Now we can apply the same principle to do the mutations. So if we have a to-do component which is going to toggle something, we could have use toggle to-do custom hook to take care of that for us. Instead of importing Axios call directly inside our application, which is something I'll not recommend, we can make use toggle to-do custom hook to take care of that for us. Let's say that our custom hook returns a function which will do the functionality of toggling our data. You know what, that let's consider this particular mutation is asynchronous as well. In that case, we'll be maintaining loading and error state. As long as we are returning the toggle to do function to our component, then we are good. And we can write our logic whatever we want inside our use toggle to do custom hook here. So now we'll be updating the mutation data to the server via the REST API call with the help of Axios as well. And this particular function is getting returned to the component, and the component is consuming the toggle to do function.
Hey Shiva, sorry for the interruption. I have a quick question. So if I'm understanding correctly, we primarily use custom hooks for making REST API calls.
Not exactly, Rahul. We'll be using it for some other operations as well, like in-memory operations, which will be updating with which we can update the local state. We have looked at an example of handling the promises, and we can use custom hooks along with React queries. React queries does take care of the caching mechanisms for us, and we can do much more application logics inside our custom hooks as well.
Thanks for the
So all of
clarification.
Thanks, Rahul. So all of these are possible because of the use of custom hooks. And in our to-do application, we have made use of use to-do and use toggle to-do custom hooks. This has made our component so smart that the hooks has become our component's brain, and it performs all the logics abstracting them from the component. So why do I want to have a separate brain? Instead, I can have my brain as part of my body. All of us here might have faced a situation of debugging or enhancing a feature in an already built-in application. For understanding the code, we'll be going through the data flow from top to bottom inside a component for hours. Instead of looking and researching a piece of code which was written by someone else, this pattern will provide with just the thing we wanted to know. This pattern is so reliable and it is so powerful. So basically, all the components in my application interacts with one or more custom hook to handle most of the application logics. This custom hook now reach out to store or API or even another custom hook. With this representation, we can come to a conclusion that we have all the UI parts encapsulated within the component, all the business logic encapsulated within the hooks, and all the external data services or utilities encapsulated as the third layer here. Now, these are all the list of hooks we have used as part of our webinar today. This includes both inbuilt hook and custom hooks. Custom hooks, some of the custom hooks we have used are use to-do list, use toggle to-do hook, and use to-do hooks. Now, let's see some real-time examples of where we can implement the custom hooks. Some of the examples are use script, use fetch, use pagination, use window size, and all. Now let's take one of them and implement them as part of our code. Let's take use permissions hook. Let's assume that we have an e-commerce website, and the orders are placed. The orders are placed inside the e-commerce website, and that is getting posted to the company. And the company will be able to view all the orders placed for that company and all the agents who work for that company and whatnot. So this use permissions hook will take the heavy lifting of rendering the UI based on the user role here. So, for example, for the company, it will have super user, super admin agent and agent user. Everyone will be there, but access for that particular user will be restricted based on the user role. This use permissions hook will do that computations for us. Now, as we can see, we have use permissions, loading state, error state, and the fetched user ID stored as part of regex here. And we are selecting those values inside our use permissions custom hook. So whenever there is a change in the user ID, we are calling a action here, fetch module permissions action. And this action, what it does is it calls the API and retrieve back the information for us and store it as part of our regex. For example, we have the sample response with module ID and the read write permission here. So this will be stored as part of the regex, and whenever the component requests for the module permission for one particular user, the returned information does contain the permission that particular user role has for a requested module, and this will be returned back to the component, and the component will react accordingly based on the permissions here. Now let's see the demo of how it looks. For a super admin user, he'll be able to view all the orders present, all the agent he has, and the settings for that particular company. But if the user is an agent user, he'll have access only for the orders and not for viewing the agents and not for the settings page as well. Now, this is how we can make use of our custom hooks to handle the complex logics for us. With this pattern, we can see that all the permission related logics are not scattered across different components. Instead, we have the control from one single place. Because of this, we have made our application more predictable. We can only achieve this with the help of custom hooks. We might have not used custom hooks in many places, but it is so much powerful than what we think about it. So with this, we are open to questions, Rahul.
Yeah, sure. And we have received a lot of questions. Thanks everyone for asking those questions. So first question is from Rajeshi, and he asked, in the example presented with the use permissions hook, could we achieve the same functionality without custom hooks? Is there a specific reason you recommend using the use permissions hook?
Yes, that's true, Rashi. We can achieve the same functionality without custom hooks, but a pattern is something which encapsulates all the details together as a layer from the components. It is not necessary to have logics in the components, right? Instead, we can have a custom hook which will decompose all the logics for us. So even our React document says to use custom hooks as part of our daily usage. There is we need not write all the custom hooks. Actually, there are plenty of pre-written general hooks which can be found as part of various blogs, or even hooks libraries are present as part of npm. But we have to always remember that we can use these inside our application to write our application logics. And the custom hooks is actually very simple to work with as we work with use state and use effect, and we are expecting custom hook to be more in usage.
Insightful. Next question is from Kalai, and he asked, is use method a built-in hook or a custom hook?
Well, I can take that question. So, use is a inbuilt hook, correct? But currently, as Shivan engineer mentioned, it is in React's canary release, which is under experimental mode. To be a giving gist of it, I can say that it can read a promise or a context, and it can return the value which is being read with it. In fact, it would be useful in reading a context and promises. Apart from that, it is useful for passing a prop from server to client in streaming a data. And in places where promise is getting rejected, it is highly efficient to go with use hook. It is simply like we can, without the world of async, await, then promises context, we can perform the same amount of operation with the help of a single word use. So this use hook will definitely simplify our work. Apart from that, there are some caveats like exception handling with respect to promises is being a complex thing with the help of use hook, which the real world React developers are working on. But once all the troubleshooting is done and once this is into live mode, definitely use hook will rule the hook world.
Definitely. Use seems pretty
Yeah.
useful. Next question is from
Yeah.
Deepan, and he asked, how can we incorporate custom hooks into class components?
Okay, I can take that question. So I was really hoping someone will bring that question up. So not only custom hooks, right, Deepan, we cannot use inbuilt hooks as part of class components as well. But if we definitely want to utilize the data from the custom hooks as part of class components, then we can implement that using HOC. So we can implement HOC with a functional component, and that functional component you can have custom hooks inside it, and HOC can be wrapped with a component with the class component. And with this, we can use the data from the custom hook inside our class component as props. So now we have a new way of implementing custom hooks inside our class component, I think.
Thanks, Shiva. Next question is from Rishi, and he asks, what are the cons of custom hooks?
Okay, for custom hooks, that I'll say the main one is we have to be very mindful of dependencies we use as part of the custom hooks actually. If we don't maintain them properly, then we might experience some unexpected behavior. So, which is something I'd say a notable one as part of custom hooks, we have to be very mindful.
Yeah, I hope Rishi you got the answer from Shiva. Now, next question is from Arpita, and she asked, can you provide any scenarios where you have utilized a custom hook within another custom hook during implementation? So basically, I guess nested custom hook.
Yeah. Okay, so let's assume that we are trying to implement a custom hook for an application logic, and this custom hook inside it is trying to fetch an API. So for calling an API, we can utilize a generic custom hook API. And this custom hook, now we can say that application logic custom hook will be present, and inside that generic custom hook for API call will be present. So this is one of the scenario where we can have nested custom hooks to use.
Good to know. Final question for this half is from Parmesh, and he asked, I have recently explored the Redux toolkit. Should we use Redux or Redux toolkit?
Yeah, I can take that question. So Redux and the Redux toolkit performs a similar thing. Well, Redux is a powerful library. We all know that. It requires a lot of code effort and the setup. Like we have to define an action, write a reducer, and then perform our actions. But comparing it to Redux toolkit, it is a simplified version of React. It is written like it will tell how a Redux should be used efficiently, but the only caveat is the official documentation will not be provided because it is a kit toolkit. It itself can make all the Redux state, like creating the action, reducer the action type. It itself can load the entire Redux setup to our application. We have to concentrate only on our logic that has to be implemented. Well, Paramesh, if you had already explored Redux, then I would definitely recommend you to explore Redux Toolkit. And yeah,
Definitely, Shimina. So we have received a lot of great questions, but unfortunately we're running short on time and won't be able to address all of them. However, please feel free to send any queries or feedback about today's webinar to techtalks@rently.com. Additionally, we'll be sending out all the reading material links via email shortly. Now, before we wrap up, I would like to extend a huge thank you to our incredible panelists, Shiva and Shrimina, for sharing their expertise with us today. Your insights have truly enriched this discussion on React custom hooks. I also want to express my gratitude to our engaged audience for their active participation and thought provoking questions. It's been a busy session filled with valuable interactions, and we owe it all to your enthusiasm and curiosity. As we conclude, remember that the learning doesn't end here. Stay curious, keep exploring, and continue pushing the boundaries of what's possible with React custom hooks. Thank you all once again for joining us today. Until next time, happy coding.